Anytime you're ready.
Sure. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for May 15th, 2019. The first item on the agenda is a discussion item, changes in the Cornelius Pond Conservation Restriction with Harwich Conservation Trust.
Good evening. I'm Michael Locke, Director of the nonprofit Harwich Conservation Trust that's been working in partnership with the town, specifically your Conservation Commission and Board of Selectmen on protecting the roughly 15 acres located at 588 Queen Anne Road for water quality and wildlife habitat protection, as well as to open a new area for a public walking trail. You approved this conservation restriction a few months ago. It then went to the State Division of Conservation Services for its review, and they had a number of non-substantive changes for language clarification. And in consultation with the town council and the state's conservation restriction reviewer, we thought it best for those changes which you see in your copy highlighted in yellow, for those changes to be reviewed by the selectmen. They did review them and approve them on May 6th, and then for you to review them and hopefully approve them, and then we can move forward seeking the state's Executive Office of Environmental Affairs Secretary's signature and ultimately finish the approval process for the conservation restriction.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments on the same for us?
I read it through a couple times and the highlights there, and I didn't see any substantive changes in terms of the things that we discussed. It's almost semantics, most of their changes, but there's a lot of them, so I can see that you want it re-signed because it's not one omission, there's a lot. So no, again, I saw no substantive changes, so I would recommend you approve the changes.
Thank you.
I did, just for clarification, one additional change the selectmen did review and also approve is accommodating up to 8 parking spaces in the parking area off of Queen Anne Road.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioners? Ernie, do you want to start?
No, I have none.
Okay. Mark?
Nope, I don't have any.
Nothing from me.
Jim? Carolyn?
Good. I've just looked at the first couple, and they're deleting the purpose for which the restriction, the land will be used. They're deleting conservation and passive outdoor recreation, open space and water. They're deleting basically the purposes.
You know, pardon me. That's a good close reading. Here's what they suggested to be in alignment with the town's warrant article, which passed by the voters last year. And that is, instead of the purposes that were listed that you see stricken, replaced with open space purposes and water quality protection purposes. So they really just wanted it in alignment with the language in the warrant article. Yeah.
Okay. No comments? Okay. We have a motion on this proposal.
I'll move to accept the modified conservation restriction as represented in the documents before us.
Second.
Seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Would you all please sign where your name is? And do you want to take this tonight, or do you want us to have it notarized?
Yes, that'd be great. I can pick it up whenever it's available. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
I just want to make sure I grab this back. It's very important. So I'll wait for it to go around and then take it back.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for a termination of applicability for 236 South Street, proposal for fence and plantings. Hi. Hi, how are you?
Good deal.
Good, thanks. You want to go ahead and
Sure.
proceed? Thank you.
So we are looking to put up a fence, 50-foot buffer. We moved it back a few feet from the last meeting, and then plant a living fence instead of the regular fence.
Okay. Any changes, Amy, beyond that?
Yeah, so this is my property manager officially of the Arnsfeld property. And after I did send Mike an email about some of the comments that we had regarding what type of fence, how many plantings, things like that. The plan did note the general location, it didn't note the number of plantings other than being native, and it did say 200 feet long of fence, but not too specifically. I mean, we know the area,
Mhm.
but the plan, it wasn't exactly reflected. So you had said, correct me if I'm wrong, that the fence would go potentially up to or just outside of the 50-foot no disturb zone.
Right.
It would either be a 6-foot stockade with a 6-inch gap at the bottom,
Mhm.
and that would be consistent with our fence requirements for any type of little critter passage. Or it could be a chain link,
Mhm.
but again, raised. And that you were proposing 50 native shrubs, and then 10 or 30 blueberry, Harwich blueberries, or maybe I got those numbers mixed, but.
I mean, we don't really have an exact number. We'll put as many as it takes to cover that line, and also kind of do 2 rows of them.
Okay.
So kind of offsets the
Yep.
gaps in between.
Yep.
It would either be the winterberry holly or the sweet pepper bush, which Amy recommended.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start with you again, Ernie. Any comments?
Yeah, so you're claiming an agricultural exemption?
No.
No.
Nope.
When, if I can clarify, you came in here last for discussion, we wanted to put the fence up to 25-foot
Mm-hmm.
line, and that would have been okay if the activity was deemed as an agriculturally exempt
Right.
activity. The commission really didn't deem the fence as part of the agriculture practices of the farm, so we encouraged them to abide by our 50-foot
Okay.
no disturb.
But can you tell me where on this plot plan the fence will be? Because I couldn't spot it that easily.
So it'd start right here.
Oh, that's good. So, yeah, I couldn't see that.
Yeah, so it'd start right there, come down. Once it gets to about here, which is the
Yeah.
close to where the 50-foot buffer is, we'll shoot back onto our property and then continue it down.
How far?
Not really sure. I think this stretch is like 60 feet. This one is 30,
Mhm.
and then this stretch is another.
But are you coming
100 or
back
so.
over to this direction?
No, not that far.
No,
Just
okay.
until right about here.
So it'll be completely outside of the 50 anyhow?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you, excuse me, but can you share with the rest of us what you just showed on me, please?
Yeah, sorry. Let me pass this around.
Well, it's just,
We have, it's down in this section down.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please.
So this is the property line right here. We're proposing to go from this corner,
Yeah.
shoot down the property line until we get to where the 50-foot is, and then we'll come back in to stay
Jog.
outside of that,
Jog.
and then shoot back down this way about 80 feet.
Okay.
Now, question for you again. You say shoot down to where the 50-foot is.
Follow the 50-foot.
Targeting the 50 or the 60?
Well, we'll be somewhere outside of the 50, over here, on this side.
All right, so if we required that you go to a 60-foot outside of that, that's fine,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Okay, I'm asking the same question, and I'm also going to ask you, when we stood on the next door neighbor's
Well, no,
drive,
Martha.
where is that located?
I have some to say, but I think she's just trying to figure out the map.
Well, you
Looks like there's
put
another wetland right
Yep.
Okay, so
Did you get out
The
there?
abutting property that you're trying
We
to
did
separate
the other,
from.
2 weeks ago, I don't know if they went to that.
Yeah, I didn't go.
Oh, sorry.
I didn't go.
it's,
This wetland's all in there.
okay, right here, and then this is the fence, and this is the fence, and where is your property line?
This is the property line, that black
Okay,
line right
you're
there, here.
You wanna put the fence,
You want to follow the
and
property
where is
line
the
down.
50-foot mark?
Right about here.
Right about.
Yeah, the engineers put a 25-foot marker right down here for us, which I think I showed you guys last time we were out the rebar. So we'll come down to about 50 feet and then come back onto our property and stay outside of that buffer.
You know, okay, thank you.
Okay, well, let's, you all set, Ernie? Other questions?
Have the issues with the neighbors been resolved?
Not yet. I think it's been resolved with you guys, but
You comfortable with those, Amy?
Comfortable with?
Issues with the neighbors? The abutting property?
I don't know if I can really speak to that, it's the, I mean, just sticking straight to the conservation aspect of this and not property lines.
Well, it's mentioned in the site summary, that's why I asked.
Well, I had given you an update saying that the neighbor had applied for administrative approval to replant some trees that had been removed.
Separate issue then.
Separate issue, separate but similar, but for this issue, for what they're asking for, to install the fence and put up additional shrubs. I mean, with, I think, a little bit of clarification, some on-site meetings, once everything's staked out where the fence is gonna go, if I can come out there, I'm comfortable with this.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mark?
I have no questions.
I've got one question that, on the map, there's another wetland mapped out on the other side there. Looks like we're close to where you're putting the fence. Do you see that, Amy?
I did, it would have to stay outside of 50 foot of any wetland. So the topography greatly increases over a hill, and it could be up there, but dropping down back to the other side, there is that other wetland, so.
yeah, we wouldn't be dropping down to the other.
Outside of
You'd have to
any
stay.
50 foot or 60 foot
Right,
wetland buffer,
right.
you have to stay out of.
All right. So yeah, other than watching out for that other wetland as well, probably to be consistent, we'd go for our 60-foot no new structure. That's all I've got.
Okay. John? Questions, Carolyn?
I just say that I'm not comfortable voting on this, so I might abstain or vote no at this point. I'm not comfortable voting on this map, because I can't see clearly where the wetlands are. Well, I see little dots, certainly, but I can't see where the 50 foot is, I can't see where the 100 foot is. I can't see exactly where you're putting your fence and where you're going to do the new plantings in relation to our delineations. I'm not comfortable voting on it.
I agree. Very difficult to see. It's an old map. It's from the proposed building of the site, so I agree with Carolyn.
Do you have survey data that allow you to put down accurate delineations? Is that something you can?
We had the line surveyed recently. I mean, we didn't get a full-size map like this one. We're still working on an as-built.
Okay.
That's still a couple months down the line.
What's your timing for wanting to have a fence?
I mean, as soon as possible. I mean, what do I have to do to make you guys happy?
It sounds like having the as-built plans where you could append the actual measurements from the resource area would be pretty helpful.
I mean, we've already, go ahead.
Go ahead. I think this plan, so the plan was for the house, but the plan that shows if the property lines haven't changed since then, this is at a large scale, but I think, so if the property lines really haven't changed in that time, you can scale it off from here, where the fence is gonna be in relation to the plantings. You can also blow that up, that particular area, so it is a surveyed plan with property lines on it. I don't know if we need a brand new plan, is what I'm saying.
I just
Or if we
wondered,
just need a clearer clearer plan than this that shows exactly where the fence is gonna go. You can scale off the 50 and 100-foot wetland buffers, things like that.
Does that need to be engineered, or is that something that I can
You
go out
have-
and place
no.
markers?
That's
Well,
a
we've
clear
already
condition.
spent
I don't think you need an
$2,500, $3,000 on just getting the property back there marked out.
Mhm.
engineer. I mean, I think if you have a surveyed plan that's to scale, it should be easy enough to sketch it out.
Okay.
Right, and the as-built, will it show the whole property, or just the housework?
The as-bilt's a whole nother issue that I'm not handling.
Right.
Their lawyers are handling the as-built, because they were the ones that did it all back in 2009 or 10 when the house was built,
Right.
so.
I think Carolyn's got a valid point. I think we usually expect to see a little more definition to what you're going to do, so.
Do you think you guys could approve the plantings tonight? We can get that going, so we have somewhat of a barrier?
I think you should work with Amy and append your existing plan with your delineation scaled out to the resource area. I think that's a reasonable thing to ask for, and come back at the next meeting.
Brad, question, so this gives us a fairly good idea of where he's planning to put the fence, I think. Would people be comfortable with voting on this with the assurance that an acceptable plan would be submitted to Amy?
So just a follow-up question, you say it's already been surveyed and marked out, but specifically, wetland delineation, has that been done, and is it marked on site so that it would be a simple matter of going out there and verifying that you're...
I think back in 2009 or 10, when they first bought the property, they put out markers along the wetlands. I think they were orange and yellow striped or something like that. Those have faded and probably gone by now, but
So
I'm
then
assuming-
there's no way of verifying that you've actually placed the fence, whatever it is, 50 or 60 feet away from the wetlands, because there's no marking out there right now that could be used as a reference point.
well, the engineers did put markers on a couple of different corners. I mean, we could always run 60-foot tapes off of each of those and see where they meet. That's going to give us our 60-foot buffer. That also doesn't require an engineer to come out. I mean, they're marked on the new plan that they did, or on the property line that they did. So we could go off of those.
The wetland is marked.
Well, his markers are marked. He placed one at 25 feet and then some up there, and then a few other points throughout the property that we can go off of.
Who is
Terry Warner, it's her husband that came out and did it. They're the engineers that came out and surveyed the property.
I think it's fair that we consider an RDA for a fence without engineering plans or without a wetlands delineation, if there's good information on the wetlands location that Amy could verify. Would you agree with that approach, Amy?
I mean, I think it's, usually, yes, I mean, I can go out and dig a hole and do some soils, but I mean, it's usually don't do that too much for private property.
Right.
But I mean, there, it's fairly straightforward where the edges of the wetlands are, because it's typically, it's a lot of old bogs in that area and
Yeah.
ditches, so it's fairly consistent. I don't know if the new survey, because you're looking really for property bounds, really, if they've redelineated a wetland, or if they just use the old wetland line and really just looked at property lines. But that's, I mean, it's something I can look at. I would like to see something a little bit more concrete, I think, as well.
So, I'm sorry, but I still didn't understand your answer about what exactly was marked out there. You said he went out. Who is he?
The engineer, like she asked, Terry Warner, well, it's her husband who worked for her, I guess. They came out, they're the engineer, they marked out the property lines and they put out stakes for us.
They marked out the property lines, but they did not do wetlands, did they?
No, we didn't ask them to. The wetlands
So
are
measure
pretty
it.
obvious where they are, just because of the ditches and edges and they're old cranberry bogs.
I'd like to see them on paper.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we're leading, is to ask him to come back at the next hearing with that information marked. Does anyone feel otherwise, that we should ask for a wetlands delineation in this case? That would be a different level of process.
I mean, if you want me to field verify the 2 spot locations, the closest spot to them, as long as the Aaron's-Felts are willing to let me do that, that's not a lot on my end. If you want me to do that, I can.
Like that, I'd be comfortable with you verifying the.
I'll find the closest spot.
I remember it was fairly obvious on the one we looked at. We never even looked at the other wetland.
Yeah, I've been over there.
Do you think that can happen between now and the next meeting, and to get the information on the plan? Is that possible?
I think the plan will actually be I can show you exactly what we can put, or what exactly it should be on there in terms of meeting the regulations. But it'll just have to be a scheduling to get me out there to, just, that's fine.
I would be more comfortable with Amy going, just seeing it on paper here. I'm not seeing anything. I'm just seeing hedges and blueberries, but I don't see anything that's gonna show me.
Is your concern the fence line or the plantings?
My concern is where the wetlands are.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody have somebody from the audience?
Any comments from the audience?
Can I speak from here, is this okay?
Yep, please identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ben Zender, I'm here on behalf of Michael McGaskill. I went down to the town and pulled the file. I couldn't tell anything about this project looking at the file. I couldn't see where the fence was, I couldn't see the construction, I couldn't see the methods of construction, what's going out there. So do you mind if somebody just create a plan of record that shows, that we can look at right now, that shows this plan? Do you mind? Can I see that?
Do we have a narrative or just an RDA application?
It just says install 200 feet of fencing, that's all it says.
Yeah.
It just says that,
I
so.
think that's what we're asking for, is more clarification.
Well, I have a couple of comments. First of all, without a plan, it's really hard to judge this, but from what I understand, and my first question is an open-ended question, is what is the purpose of the fence? Why is the fence being put there? Because this landowner has significant linear area around their lot, most of which extends to the back around open space that is bordering a wetland. It looks, from what I think, and I think without seeing a plan, I don't know, it looks as if this is only coming with one boundary line. And the reason for that boundary line is because Michael McGaskill lives right behind me. And some months ago, they surveyed their property, identified some plantings that Michael had planted, and they sent a letter from an attorney saying remove these or we're going to sue. He went out and removed them and got an after the fact from Amy, and now they're coming in and put a 6-foot high stockade fence on one isolated boundary line. This boundary line is a significant distance from the usual areas of this lot. And when you look at this plan, you'll see where the house and the barn and all these areas are. This is a spike fence. Michael can tell you that there's significant movement of wildlife through this area because of the nature of the open space, because of the nature of the bog. And it's not just raccoons and field mice and rabbits, it's deer, it's larger mammals. The appropriate fence along here would be a split rail fence. If they're looking to contain livestock, the appropriate fence would be an electrified wire fence. Something that allows animals to move. A chain link fence, hundreds of feet from your house, along one boundary line, isolated boundary line, that's really just a statement. It's a statement of ownership, and that can just as easily be done with a split rail fence, which would serve the interest better, would allow the movement of animals better, and would serve the interest of the landowner in identifying exactly where his or their boundary line is, which is important. But to put an isolated 200-foot section of chain link fence, I think is punitive, which isn't really before you, but it's also, it's not really in keeping with what you want to see out there. Secondly, you've had no discussion about how you're going to get those, I'm assuming it's 25 panels out there, how you're going to dig the holes, how you're going to move them, how you're going to dig them, how you're going to install them. There's going to be some activity there. There's going to have to be. And so, this buffer zone isn't just a distance from a wetland, it's a protected area where you want to see minimal activity, appropriate activity, to protect the interest. And it's both botanical and it's mammalian and it's amphibious, it's everything. And So, you know, I think the idea of a living fence is a great idea. It really is a good idea, and I think you should go along with that, and you should assist the applicant in that. Don't let them go throw a 200-foot section of chain link or stockade fence out there in the middle of nowhere, just to tell the neighbor that, you know, this is my land. I don't think that's an appropriate use of the buffer zone, and I hope that you keep that in mind when you ask the applicant to come back. Secondly, or thirdly, or fourthly, I think that you should have a plan that identifies the wetland. You have to have a wetland line, because if you don't have a wetland line, you don't know where the fence is going. And 60 feet off of a wetland is certainly an appropriate distance, but you have to know where it is. And when those guys go out there with their augers, their stuff on a hot day, and they're gonna dig those fence poles, unless somebody flags the wetland line and flags that fence line and puts it on a plan that's in front of this applicant, there's really no way that you can say that it's a reasonable activity that, you know, that requires a negative determination. So I think
But cutting trees is, right?
cutting trees isn't either.
Oh, jeez.
And that's why Michael came in and called me after the fact and did what he was doing, so.
Do as I say, you know?
All right, let's keep to the RDA
And
discussion.
I'll conclude my comments there, you know, if you want more
Oh,
information
thank
about
God.
Wetland Woman, Michael can tell you all about it, you know, I can't tell you what travels through there, but, you know, so.
The whole point of the fence is to keep animals in and keep animals out. Like he stated, the rest of the property is all open. It's all open land, there is no neighbors, so we don't have to worry about the neighbor's dogs coming onto our property or our animals going onto his. That's why we're putting up the fence. Anything else, there's plenty of room to travel around for deer and whatever other animals are out there, because it's all open.
But I think it's a valid point to say that we don't really have much in the way of a project narrative.
Oh, I'll get the plan. I'll do all that stuff for you guys. Amy can meet me out there.
So if I may, I mean, all odds and neighbor disputes aside, we're here really to just look at the Wetlands Protection Act and the bylaw and say, regardless of the reasoning for the fence, does the fence meet or not meet the wetland regulations?
I'm not satisfied with this.
Yeah, yep, that's fine.
So I would say modify the plan with information on the actual distance to the wetlands. Provide us with a narrative
Mhm.
on the project, intentions, you know, purpose, materials. Have we discussed the fence being raised up a little bit to allow?
Mhm.
Okay, so what is the distance? Do we have that?
You had said 6 inches, maybe we can look at that a little bit.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that 2 meetings ago or
Right,
the
yeah.
last meeting.
I think it would be helpful to have a 1 or 2 page narrative that describes the project so we can, you know, review and vote on that. Another question from the audience?
If I may,
Sure.
I am the landowner next to them, Mike McCaskill, 22 Moss Hill Road. Just to address Mr. Lewis's comment about cutting trees to the attorney. I got a letter from an attorney, their attorney in Boston, with a surveyed plan that they just had surveyed. And by permission of the owners, when they bought the property, I planted a row of leaves. We knew at the time that I planted them that they were on their property, and they were perfectly fine with that. So I got a letter saying, remove your property, or we're gonna remove it for you, including these leaves that I planted. We're gonna remove it for you at your expense. So I removed the plants. Since I have bought 24 trees, I've planted 16 so far, and I've created a new line of delineation between these two properties. Not disputing who owns the property, I know who owns the property. As far as the wildlife goes, there's a significant amount of wildlife that moves through here. 6-inch gap under a fence is not gonna allow fair travel for deer, coyotes, fisher cats, raccoons.
The ones you shoot?
You shouldn't
The ones you
interrupt.
shoot
I'm
in
talking.
the
Hold
hole?
on.
I'm talking.
Oh, I hear you.
That-
You gotta wait your turn.
Chairman, thank
Yes.
you. So.
Well, I'll get the new plan for you
So,
guys.
In the end, these people are burying horses on the property, these people
You wanna know
have
what date
changed,
you're gonna be continued to?
these people have changed the
2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now?
configuration of the ditch out back. They put a riding ring out front, they changed the configuration, they were
It's not
back
here
before
anymore. I
you.
should talk about it.
The entire property has been modified, and when they were allowed to build this McMansion up on the road, they traded doing anything with the property out back. They've changed the trails, they've changed the ditch, they filled in a wetland on the opposite side of the property as mine to make a four-wheeler trail into the town property that's out there with no culvert or anything else. They blocked the ditch and flood that back bog. So I would argue that the wetland is quite different, which you'll find out if Amy goes out and digs holes, than it was when they bought the property. Because they dam it and flood that back bog, and they've done so to kill trees in the backyard so that they can have more backyard. But the entire property, they have a manure management plan on file with you. They're dumping out back. It's infested with rats now with what they do. And this is all about what he just had his outburst about. Thinks that I'm going to shoot the deer. I have thousands of pictures of the deer and foxes and coyotes traveling through there. And I would ask that the commission looks at the entire property, because I know that they're here for a fence on that side, but as the attorney pointed out, that doesn't allow for free travel of wildlife through there. And the wetlands are a lot closer than they're saying.
All right, well, thank you both for your comments. I'm going to make a motion to continue this hearing until the next, which is what date, Amy?
June 5th.
June 5th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second? Any discussion on this? A little unusual.
I'm sorry to run everybody, get to another hearing. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Okay. Grab your paper copy, it's right here. Okay, next, we have a request for determination of applicability for 35 Rainbow Way, proposal for a new deck footing pergola over existing deck.
Good evening. So I'm PJ McClay. I'm the owner of 35 Rainbow Way, and we're proposing to add a pergola over the existing deck, and in order to do so, replace 2 existing footings.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Amy, any
Pretty
comments?
straightforward. The reason it's here in front of you as an RDA and not done administratively is because it is only 28.2 feet away from the edge of the wetlands, so it kind of triggered the fee impound here. I would recommend approval of the -3, so long as we put a condition, I mean, it's going to be sonotube foundation, but that it does not become an actual foundation, that the pergola doesn't become a 3-season room. This is just down the road.
Yeah.
You or the previous owners, just put conditions. It's really not something living space, and that we investigate whether or not it's possible to move the propane tanks farther from the wetland.
Yeah.
We had spoken before the meeting, and it was the fire department to deal with code. The tanks are close to the wetland, so it's something that we can look into. But no, I would, with the conditions I mentioned, I recommend approval of the project.
Thank you, Amy. Any comments from the table, Ernie?
One question, when we were out looking at the property today, I noticed there was a shed at the end of the house on the southeast end of the house, down in here.
Yep.
Says,
Right here.
what's the distance of that to Sand Lake, do you know? Is that within the 50? And when was it installed?
It was installed by the previous owner, so it's over 5 years ago. As far as the distance, I know it was closer and they moved it back, but I don't have a accurate measurement of where that would be.
So, yeah, because it's not really delineated well on here, but I wonder if that's something you want to look into, Amy, to see if they have proper permits for that.
Yeah, we could do that probably administratively, hopefully, but yes, I.
Yeah, because that comes into our
It's, yeah, it's not a permanent structure, so
Oh.
it could potentially be moved. No, my point is if it needs to be moved slightly, it can be moved slightly.
Yeah, if it can, I mean, you don't even have the room to get it outside of the 100 in here, so,
No, with both ponds, no.
yeah, so it would be an issue either way, if you moved it, there's no place to move it to.
Yeah, true.
I can check it.
So, yeah, if you look into that, I would suggest, and the propane tanks, I noticed that were right on the wetlands as well, and I assume those were permitted, it's really the only location.
They were previously against the house, and the fire department had them moved. This is
Yeah.
the previous owner had told us
Okay.
this, so they moved them away from the house. But
Yeah.
with that property, there's
You have no
really
place
nowhere to
go.
put them, that they're not going to be in a buffer zone.
Yeah,
So
okay,
that's the issue.
that's fine, yeah, I have no other questions.
No, I agree with Amy's remarks.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, no comments.
Carolyn, Paula?
Nope.
Okay. Does someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the RDA with a -3 determination for 35 Rainbow Way, new deck footings and pergola over existing deck.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Please sign.
Thank you.
Call you when this is ready.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening. Feel better.
Come around.
Okay. Sorry about grabbing the agenda. Toss it back into the other one, I guess.
Down there, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I'm going to pass the next one, slight revisions.
Mhm.
If that's okay.
Okay.
Share for every 2 people if you can. Just
Sure.
So we'll share.
Next, we have a notice of intent for 3 Davis Lane, proposal for additions and renovations, a continuance from the previous hearing. You got it.
This is what, I emailed this to Nikki earlier today, so it's, I'm assuming that's what you mean by in the Dropbox.
The one in the Dropbox, I don't know if she changed it, has the revisions.
It's 2:49 this afternoon, so it must be.
Yeah.
I'm sure I didn't know she got it in there.
Young people. Good evening, Stephanie Sequin with Broder and Wilcox, representing the Powers. We were here 2 weeks ago, I guess. This is an application for some, I think, relatively small additions, renovations to the existing building. And the hearing was continued because you wanted to have some more information about the types of mitigation plantings that were being proposed. And also there is an existing planting strip at the top of the bank, between the top of the bank and the existing lawn, that has been maintained, and you were questioning whether that should be, there should be something done to that to make it more of a naturalized buffer strip. So I met with Amy out there last week, and we took a look at it. And so I submitted a revised plan. You should be looking at the revised plan dated May 13th, 2019. And on my plan, I highlighted, the only change is this note over here. I added that the existing lawn, there's 2 sort of crescent-shaped sections of the lawn out next to the top of the bank that we're proposing as the mitigation area, removing the lawn and restoring it. And I've added that they will be restored with purple coneflower and yarrow. And then also I added a note beneath that, the 2 existing mulch planting strips, a total of 16 sweet fern will be planted, because there is some, it's kind of sparsely planted there, so we figured that number would be able to fit in amongst the other plants. And lastly, I added at the bottom of that note, both areas shall be allowed to naturalize. So hopefully this is what you were looking for.
Thank you for making those changes. Any comments, Amy?
Yeah, I do remember on site talking about coneflower and yarrow and sweet fern, definitely. We paced out, so talking about the sweet fern, we kind of paced out in the mulch beds where the gaps really were. And picked like there was like around 8 to 10 that would fit on each little lobe there. without overcrowding, and would fill in nicely, give things room to move. So I agree with the sweet fern. I think maybe I didn't convey it correctly with the purple coneflower and yarrow. While those are good, I think the commission was looking more for those to be kind of like part of, but not the entire 540 square feet, that maybe we add some more, like a couple of shrubs
Okay.
spaced in between there too, and not just, and coneflower and yarrow are really great for pollinators, and they're native drought-tolerant plants, but maybe if we add a couple of bayberry or something in there too, or Rosa, Carolina rose or Virginia rose, that would, it also lend itself to not being so manicured over time.
Okay. And I think I would go more with the Carolina rose, because I'm worried the bayberry is going to just get too big.
Yeah, it's just something, I think, some woody shrubs in there too, would be a good idea.
Okay.
But I don't think that is a change that we need to go back to the drawing board for by any means.
What would the substrate look like, Amy, if you didn't make those plantings? Would it be mulch? Would it be, what would it look like if we don't do that?
Don't do what?
Make the plantings you just suggested, the additional plantings. You would have the ferns, what would be between the plantings?
Between them, I think maybe seeing how deep the mulch is, and maybe either taking the top part of the mulch off and letting the grasses and things naturalize over time. We talked about seeding the area with a native Cape Cod grass mix to letting that naturalize in between everything. But the new area is definitely not to be mulched, and the old areas to be planted and kind of let go wild, back to nature. Or strip out a little bit if it's really thick.
Okay. Comments? Start with you, Ernie.
This is then a revision to an existing approval that we gave, and
No, they've asked for additions to the house, so this is mitigation.
I guess my question is, since this is on the sound, is this one of those properties that would suggest that we condition this approval on a restriction on use of fertilizer on the lawn and all that sort of thing?
Yep.
Good, all right, thank you.
That'll definitely be in the conditions.
Another question?
No questions.
Jim?
Yeah, I would like to see a few shrubs interspersed with the, I'm not familiar with those kind of low flowering plants, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yarrow can get 3 feet, but still.
It's like
it's not a shrub, it's not.
It's a perennial
really-
flower,
Yes.
basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
something offset that.
Eyes open window.
Yeah, right.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know, it looks like there might be room for 4 shrubs in each. I don't know, consider a beach plum along with the rose, like 2 of each on each, something like that.
If the beach plum could be located, well, that's your argument, Stephanie. I know we don't want to plant anything that they're gonna have to come back and ask to top or prune.
Does that get too tall?
I think it gets too, unless it's on the very sides, which probably would be a problem. But it's something I don't mind looking at. I say definitely the roses would work. But I mean, I agree, it would be nice to get this in.
Yeah, and
It's practical.
this is a point that should apply to everything. When we do mitigation plantings, they're definitely to be left natural and never touched, and anything from there towards the resource would always be required to be left natural in general.
My thought was to word this is getting into the conditions actually, but is to kind of word that as a no-mow zone, and to specify in the conditions that can't be mulched, is not to be,
Right.
other than drip irrigation to establish it
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, it's really
Well,
just to be touched.
it's in a no disturb zone.
Right, but
And I
to
think
make it
sometimes
even
that gets
clearer.
lost in translation when we do these plantings,
Mhm.
but any mitigation that's in a no disturb zone is from there after you can't disturb it, right? So, that maybe should be part of the standard language and conditions or something like that. Anyway, that's all I've got.
Points, Jim? John?
So,
Can you remind me what is in the existing mulch beds now? Do I remember correctly that there are ornamental roses in there? And I would,
There is Rosa Rugosa, right? Did we?
Rosa rugosa, there are a couple of hydrangeas, but I noticed mostly, there was, sorry, there is some salvia in there. I do remember it actually is, granted that they're very well cared for, manicured. There seem to actually be more natives than ornamentals in there, but there are, I mean, what stands out are the hydrangeas. There's a couple more. But most of the stuff that's in there is native and will just, if let be, naturalize. Sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head what it all is.
okay, I guess my concern is sort of similar to Jim's. When there are ornamentals there, like hydrangeas, which people typically cut back every year, they maintain them, and if the idea is no-go, and you've got a bunch of ornamentals in there, which people normally pay attention to and maintain, I'm just wondering whether we shouldn't be insisting on just native plantings there, period, if that's the idea. I don't quite get how interplanting sweet ferns with hydrangeas and.
Or, I mean, the things that really need the maintenance are the hydrangeas. There's not many there. Maybe they'd be amenable to moving on outside that strip.
I wish I had a photo, and I think I do. I just don't have it with me.
But I don't know how well.
I mean, hydrangeas are not, they're not invasive. It's just your issue is that they will want to maintain them.
Typically fertilize hydrangeas, people typically prune them, and if there are other things getting in the way, if the hydrangea's growing, people may be tempted to cut them back. And, I mean, if we're really saying we want you to let that naturalize completely, it seems inconsistent to me, that's all.
The photo's really far back. I only see 2 hydrangeas on either side, though. It's not much. They already got moved, if they get moved. And plant something if they wanted something with similar color, something like indigo.
So I guess if you want to make that a condition that the ornamental hydrangeas be removed and replaced.
I think we just have to make a strong condition that it is a completely undisturbed zone,
Mhm.
whatever happens in there, happens in there.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my other question is, on the construction notes, you say no herbicides to be used on subject lot, but I guess, as was stated earlier, and made clear again, I guess it's not just herbicides, it's any chemicals, it's within 100 feet.
Within the buffer.
Within the buffer.
Yeah, we talked about that on site fertilization.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation because they're not really proposing to construct something in that area. It's just mitigation, and it's fit in around existing plantings. So if it was all being disturbed, we would start off completely naturalized. And so, but if the commission members feel that way, I think it's something we can discuss. I'm sure the property owner was thinking they could keep that section the way it was.
That's what I told them was going to be allowed, what I thought would be allowed, but just adding to, sort of beefing it up a little bit.
Right. Well, let's finish with comments, then we'll come back to that point. Carolyn, any thoughts on this?
I have not been to the property, but I have to comment that is we've requested mitigation over the past years with natives and drought resistant plants in our mitigation. it never occurred to me that they couldn't do minor pruning of these plants to keep them healthy.
Well, that's, yeah, that could be conditioned to the health of the plant. Pruning, I think we mean is reviews and things like that.
I knew, Vista pruning is, major pruning, if it gets, how to say, but it never
Usually
struck me
don't have
that they,
hydrangeas in a no-mow, usually don't have hydrangeas in
in
a.
a no-mow zone.
No.
It kind of goes against my grain to say, take out a beautiful hydrangea bush that's doing well in a spot. And I think more of the native plantings as to their root system and how they can hold on to the ground in that area, which is a very vulnerable area. And as Ernie pointed out, I was not here for the previous hearing, but I hope that the owner is well aware that we will have a strict no herbicide, pesticide, no extension of the irrigation system. We've had some people, when they realize how strict we were on that, come back and say, oh, well, maybe we don't want to do it.
Mhm. So I know no expansion, there is irrigation here, definitely. So I understand no expansion to that, which makes sense. No pesticides or herbicides within the buffer. You, I think, are going to also condition it on no further fertilizers in the 100-foot buffer, which I don't really see in your regulations. Is it the section under lawns, the new regulations? Because I do see in that section use of pesticides not permitted, but I don't see, it discusses about, you may require a reduction, no further expansion, but I don't specifically see no fertilizers in the 100-foot buffer in your new regulations.
It's not the most recent one.
It is, I don't know.
July 28th, no. Wasn't it 2019, October 29th, or October 2020?
October 2018.
Okay.
While we're looking, Paula, any additional comments outside of
No.
this one?
No.
Okay. I think what you're seeing is the evolution of a commission where we've seen a lot of orders that had conditions put in for that area, that breaks the resource area, and we haven't seen very good compliance of what happens. And so I think you're seeing commission members that want to see a truly a no disturb zone against that resource area.
And they understand, and you understand the impact of using fertilizers, right?
Oh, yes, yep.
But you're
It's quite a distance from the sound.
irrelevant, I think, from my perspective.
Okay.
But, it's still close enough. I mean, it's still waterfront property. And it bothers me immeasurably when people, when they understand what the impact is, they continue to do it. And it's just destroying our environment. And they just prefer to have a nice green grass, golf course lawn.
Prior to the bylaw change, we were allowing the continued use of fertilizers and irrigation when it was pre-existing. And with new construction, we were asking for no further applications. I think the difference in the bylaw change is we're eliminating it in that zone when permits come before us. Here's a case where you've got a fair amount that's already established with irrigation. So I can understand the proponents' concerns.
Yeah, I believe so. So it reads, on lots where turf lawn currently exists and has for a long period of time, the commission may require that turf lawn area be reduced or eliminated when an application for new project on that lot is brought before them.
How about fertilizers?
It says no use of pesticides, but I can't find anything in here about fertilizer.
Right.
But this is as of the 20th of July. I don't have the one from September.
Okay, so that's not
So
modified.
this is not the,
Yeah. Well, it's important because we could consider, if the language allows us to allow maintenance of existing lawn in the 50 to 100, if the language allows us to do that. I can't see us allowing continued fertilization to 0 to 50. But I think it's all up to the language that we approved.
One time, we have a one-time slow release
organic.
fertilization may be allowed on a case-by-case basis.
We've been consistently.
So that says that you can't allow that, but at the meeting, the comment was, and I think it was Paula who said, no continued fertilization within the 100-foot buffer per our regulations. And I'm just asking, where in your regulations does it say that? You can make whatever conditions you want. I was just questioning, it was sort of like a done deal. It's in our regulations, and I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, you're right. I thought it was more clear than.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
But I don't have the most current. This is as of June.
And I only looked in the section 1.06 lawns. Maybe it's somewhere else.
Elsewhere. Okay, yeah, it's somewhere else. It's in 2 buffer zone. No, maybe not.
No, I mean, it is talked about also no disturb zone. New lawn area shall not be permitted in that.
No, it
But
isn't.
that's not new lawn.
Huh.
And we are reducing existing turf lawn.
Understood.
What's the footprint of the irrigation system? Does it come right up to where that present area has the mulch, or is it, you know,
I have to guess, it's all very green
right?
grass, so I gotta guess the whole, and maybe even the mulched area gets
Right.
the irrigation.
Well, prior to the change, our application was to have existing lawn. We were not restricting that application or telling folks they could have to stop irrigating when they had systems in place.
Well, the irrigation wasn't the change. We haven't been, but we have been consistently conditioning no fertilization within the 100-foot buffer zone. I think we've done that on every project in the past year.
We can amend
so-
these regulations too. I don't know what.
I thought it was more clear in
I
here.
thought it was in there too.
And I agree, that's a good condition, but it's helpful to know what to tell a client to expect
Absolutely.
going in.
Yep.
right, well, what's the way to go forward here? Should we ask you to consult with your client to see if they would be amenable to that condition? Or if they would strongly object to it? It's,
I'm pretty sure they'll strongly object, given
To which
what's there
condition?
now.
to having no fertilization to 0 to 100, which apparently is not supported by our bylaws, which we thought it was.
I think it's just not necessarily required.
We can still.
We can still
impose
condition
it
it.
as a condition.
I think,
We have on every project in the last year.
And
so.
just as a reminder, I guess, of the numbers we're talking about, there's a 46. 262 square foot increase in coverage in the 50 to 100, which is triggering the 2 to 1, 540 square feet of mitigation. So this is not a new house. The landscaping that's here now has been here for a long time. I think it's a fairly modest expansion here, and it is being mitigated through the elimination of some of the turf lawn.
Yeah, the point was, we just have such a tremendous problem with nitrogen and phosphorus in town that as each project came before us, we just wanted to, start eliminating it. It's the best we can do at this time, and we're working on further regulations for it, because it's such a problem. So we have been very consistent in applying that recently. Even on small projects. And it's not the irrigation, so.
well, I suggest then that somebody offers a motion that, makes that condition, if that's what you wish, but I would argue that we don't ask them to also pull out plantings that are there now that are not part of the construction, they're not part of the proposal. So I think it seems to be a little bit punitive to have both, given our present bylaws. I thought we had that regulation, but we don't. So but you can make a motion any way you like, but that would be my suggestion.
Sure.
Because I think we have no other issues really we're debating right now.
Yeah. Where are we at here? Davis Lane. I'll make a motion to approve the notice of intent for 3 Davis Lane additions and renovations as per the amended plan, with the condition that all areas between the mitigation and the resource be left to naturalize in perpetuity, and that no fertilization, pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides are applied to the lawn within the 100-foot buffer zone. That condition is to maintained in perpetuity.
Okay, do we have a second? John, second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any abstentions? No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, when's your request to move your hearing up because of personal issues?
Okay. Can I continue to?
Sorry, that doesn't sound very good.
All right, let me just quickly, then I'm going to continue the next two on the list for, I'll make a motion to continue 0 Sequoia Lane, notice of intent until June 5th. Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have a request to continue 4 Shady Drive, notice of intent for new dwelling in the perpetuances to June 5th as well. I make a motion to
Second.
continue it, seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now that brings up, are you Pleasant Lane?
No, I'm the one following
Okay,
that.
so Wawa Tacey?
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have a request to amend the order of conditions for 1 Wawa Tacey Road, invasive plant species removal.
So based on the comments, thank you, that I've already cited summaries, I conveyed those to Catherine, and she has some revisions for you, if that's okay, it's going to be fairly minor.
Catherine Ricks here on behalf of the Kriegers. And the revisions are pretty much within the notes, and it's just based on the recommendations that Amy had that she sent to me. So while the plans are being passed around, just to go over it, it's a mitigation on the top of a bank from a previous approval for the revetment that had a little bit of mitigation. This is additional mitigation at the top. So it'll be removal of the invasive species, and then placing a sandy loam at the top in the area, and then planting native plantings. So at this time, the revisions include doing the native coastal grasses, and not the American beach grass, but the switchgrass, little blue stem, and purple love grass, if that's available. That'll be put to the western side of the staircase with the bearberry. That's going to be planted at 6 foot on center, kind of in a grid pattern there. And I did the quantities, and there's going to be 46 of the bearberry. And then on the eastern side of the staircase, there's going to be sweet fern interspersed with a bayberry, which is going to be a quantity of 12 of them, 6 foot on center, a little bit offset from the top of the revetment. And then on the easternmost 4 rows of that is going to be the, what was it, beach plum. That was a recommendation on that. So your heights will kind of go from your lower area on the western side of the staircase, and then it'll increase in height as you go to the eastern side, and you'll have a variety of the native plantings and shrubs in that area.
Any comments for us, Amy?
Yeah, I think, so bearberry is a low ground cover, and though it does spread, I think 6 feet on center is rather large, unless you're gonna be putting the grasses in between.
Yeah, the grasses would go kind of in between that, and from what I've read and what I know on it,
Be shaded out though.
yeah.
Bearberry doesn't need to be shaded out.
I don't know how much it's,
Some grasses. Especially switchgrass, that would get too big and it would overshadow.
that one might, yeah.
So.
We can kind of do pockets of it too, in a way, instead
that
of the
would
grid
be-
pattern.
That would be better, pockets of things to establish certain things. And potentially, I know it's the review area, but potentially incorporate a couple of the sweet fern, which are a woody small shrub in that area as well. Bearberry and grow well together, and it's fairly low, so it would just be kind of ground covers there.
Mhm.
But I do, other than that, maybe mixing it up a little bit in this area. So on the east end, I think your plan is great. On the west side, I think with just minor tweaking and placement of plantings, it would be fine.
With the sweet fern, I guess it doesn't go so well with the bearberry, and that's why I kept the sweet fern on the one side where it goes really well with bayberry in growing. And so that's where when I was reading up on it in my research, that's why I kept the sweet fern with the bayberry, and I kept the bearberry separate.
We have a ton of it at Thompson's Field. and
If
they
it
all
works,
grow
then it
together.
works, yeah.
But I was just trying to get a little bit of
Yeah.
variation on the west side too. But,
Okay.
So this project, as the commission remember, was extended a couple of months ago, given an extension permit, and it was to remove the most seaward of the rock structures. And the land one on the actual bank itself was gonna be reconstructed a little bit farther seaward than existing now, but certainly not as far seaward as the primary, if you will, rock structure. So they did revegetate some, and thought this was, because it was a larger scale thing, I thought it was worthy of an amendment rather than just a, plan change, so. I'm comfortable with it. We can work together on placement.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments?
No.
Mark?
No.
Yeah, nothing.
Okay.
So again, with the grass, that place today looks like some well-fed and tended lawn, and well, before I finish that sentence, I don't see where the coastal bank is here. The elevation looks like the coastal bank is, or maybe that's the line behind, right behind the mitigation is the coastal bank, so everything on the property is within 100 feet, right?
Yeah, so your top of revetment is your top of bank.
Okay, so what's the label on the elevation then, that there's a dimension that is labeled as coastal bank, and the shoreward end of that is inside, landward of the mitigation?
Yeah. Well, we do have some, because of the slope, it is somewhat considered a coastal bank in this area, but it's a very shallow coastal bank, so it is on that area. Sorry.
So my question is, for the purposes, for our purposes,
It is.
identifying the resource area, where is the coastal bank?
It would be considered up to this point, so yes, where the
Most of
mitigation
lawn
is.
property
Yes,
Most of the lawn is within 50 feet.
correct.
And where you're mitigating is in the resource area.
Pretty much, yes. The way that this is a shallow, there's a steeper coastal bank where the revetment is, and then it's more of a shallow, but within the definitions of policy 92-1, it is considered a coastal bank.
So I would just
You're
say that,
recreating coastal beach by getting rid of
Yeah.
the rocks.
I would just say that just following our previous conversation, what we've been doing is we were conditioned with no more.
Correct. Naturalization and yes, correct.
And also, it was my impression when we were out there that you were removing the existing revetment. That's not what you're doing. You're putting a lower revetment.
Getting rid of one.
So, yeah, right now he's focusing on the mitigation, but eventually what the plan was, what the original order of conditions was to remove this and place it on the toe of this so you'll have more coastal beach. So creating more of the coastal beach in that area.
But the process doesn't involve removing the existing mortared
No, it does not.
I'm sorry, that was I thought it did.
Oh, okay, no, it does not.
So it's less disruptive than I
Yeah,
thought.
significantly.
Yes, sorry, that was my misunderstanding.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Carolyn, any comments? Paula?
No?
Okay. I would just like to see us condition this so that, you know, it really does become a no disturb zone and the plantings do provide natural habitat. We've had a trend in the last decade of some of this work done for invasive plant removal where it becomes highly ornamental, really structured habitat, not at all naturalized. So this is a site where I think we'd really like to see the order of conditions allow us to track that and to enforce that. So, okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
I could try it again. Sorry, where are we?
It's the Wawa Tasty.
Wow, what's this?
It's on the front
Is it?
page, yeah. One. Yep. Let's see.
Well, there we are.
Yep,
Crystal.
one Wawa.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
there's a comment in the
Oh,
audience.
sorry. Any comments from the audience?
Hi, my name is Ed Doherty. Here on behalf of the Windermere Beach Trust. 3 years ago, a permit was in place for the revetment. Does any of this, any of the orders, any of the original plan or permit, anything changed?
No.
As far as order and conditions?
It won't change anything for the work that goes across yours. This is more the upland mitigation, and for this, they're just gonna come across the upland area, so
Stones that are on the beach are gonna sit there for a little bit longer?
a little bit longer until they do it. But nothing from that order of conditions will change. This will just be in addition to it. There's mitigation at the top, and they are not planning on coming across.
And that, so that original order of conditions, nothing's changed. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Actually, I have a question. Are we allowed to make amendments to the order of conditions in approving these amendments?
Only as it has to do with the proposed amendment, which is the planting, we're not talking about the revetment itself.
Right. We can't. Can we get into the fertilization thing?
I think we can, since we don't have it as a,
Probably should have done it at the time of the extension, really.
Yes.
I don't
mean, it would be hard. I mean, if the applicant is amenable to continuing, they can still irrigate if they're amenable to not fertilize. That would be helpful.
Yeah.
But I mean, anytime a project does come forward for new, we can put new conditions on it. But we really, didn't have to do with the house, it had to do with the revetment, so I don't know if it's appropriate. Try.
Yeah, I would say that you could put that in for the work area.
Okay. All right, well, I make a motion to approve the request to amend order of conditions for 1 Wawatesi Road, invasive species removal.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Carolyn. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. No abstentions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have 2 more of these back, please? Thank you. Got it.
Good job.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, have a good night. No, I'm good. No, I needed the new ones.
Okay, and next we have 522 Pleasant Lake Avenue, seasonal dock, and I apologize for making you wait a little bit.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
No worries. So I'm Julie Murata, and I was here a month ago. I had purchased the estate of my late mother at 522 Pleasant Lake Ave and wanted to put in our seasonal dock. So I followed your instructions from the last time I was here, and I filed a notice of intent, and I notified all abutters. And as of yesterday, I was informed by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program that it is an area where there is some endangered wildlife, and I believe they're clams of some sort. So I filed page 5 and 6 of the order of intent, notice of intent, to get their approval to put the dock in. So I'm here just to present the case to you in hopes that they approve it, and then I have the permission to put the dock back into the water. But it's been in for 26 years or so. Yep, nothing new. Very small footprint. The dock just sits on the sand. It's not anything permanent. It comes in and out. We put it in on Memorial Day and take it out at Labor Day.
Okay, thank you. Amy, any
You're
comments
welcome.
on this one?
So this was one of the ones where it has a Chapter 91 license,
Yep.
but not in order. They came in front of us to describe it before. You said file a notice of intent to get an order of conditions. And it was either a sedge or a mussel. It had to have been
Something.
over there.
Mm-hmm.
So let me know if they want more than that, because it was a little odd that they only had you file page 5 and 6. And not a separate application with them. Did they charge you a fee?
$300.
Okay, so they charge you the right fee.
This has been very costly for us, I'll tell you.
Yeah, so we just
Something
want to
is
get it
paying for
right, but I
almost
also want to try to help you if we can.
Yeah.
So their dock meets all the requirements. It's 42 feet long, 3.5 feet wide. Unknown depth at the end, but it's
It's about 4.5 feet.
it's
Yeah.
well over. I know that too. It's deep right there.
It's deep after about 4 feet beyond the dock.
Required
Yeah.
is
It's about 20 feet up from
Two and
I
a
dive
half
a lot,
is-
it's about 20
Yeah.
feet off the beach where it goes down to about 20, 30 feet.
Yeah.
It is close to the abutting property line.
Mhm.
closer to than what we would permit typically. However, it's more of a Chapter 91 issue, which they have a Chapter 91 license.
Mm-hmm.
Has to deal with navigational issues rather than wetlands issues. So they,
It's within
Yeah, letter,
the buoys too, so.
yeah.
if they had no issue, then I don't think we should have an issue with it.
Yeah.
So pending, we cannot vote on it until Natural Heritage has issued what's called a no-take letter, which we're not allowed to do that.
Right.
So, but pending that and any conditions they may have, I would recommend hopefully a continuance until June 5th.
All right. So that'll happen. I guess I'll ask for any comments, understanding we're going to revisit this again after Natural Heritage comes back to us. But
Yeah.
any comments now from anybody?
There's no way that we could take a vote now so that when Natural Heritage comes back, if it's.
That's what I was hoping, so we wouldn't have to come back June 5th for Milton,
Not-
yeah.
If we vote and we do not issue a permit within 21 days, we lose all really ability to regulate. If you just submitted to Natural Heritage today, they have up to 60 days to approve it. They try to do it in 30, so
Mm-hmm.
it just, I would recommend you do not.
Yeah, we haven't before. We really have to wait for that letter.
It
But I
puts
think-
us in a precarious
Right.
position.
I think you're not hearing any objections. You've been before us before, so.
So do we need to come back June 5th, or can we just do this through
Depends on what Heritage
conversations?
has to say.
Okay,
I can't say you don't, I mean, I hope that they don't come back with something strange, but I
Yep.
can't tell you, definitely don't have to come back yet.
And they
Do
might
they
not.
have to be here in person?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I have a question though. We cannot be the only people putting the dock in and out. There's at least a dozen across our side that have been putting them in longer than we have on the same type. Are they here too? Are they dealing with the same issues
We
like
have
this?
two other docks that have come in.
And they're
because
saying-
2 sales
Yeah.
were done, 2
Yeah,
new
well,
sales.
It
yeah.
doesn't have to do with sales. It transfers with the property once you have it. Most of those docks are permitted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were very surprised to get the secondary thing after being here, and it's like, okay, this may never be able to get in this season, and then we're worried that we have to go again through this again next year.
No,
Meaning
once it's,
because
no,
of
no,
the
no,
fact
we
that we're
won't.
almost short. We got a couple of years left on the one we have, right?
No, we're
That's
fine.
just a refi,
We're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
resubmittal of existing
Okay.
information.
I think it's a question whether it's June 5th that they get back to us or the one after. They might not. get
And then
back
we
to
could
us.
lose the whole
Then we
season
can lose
over
the whole
this.
season. That's what we're worried about.
That's what we're really upset
We
about.
can't tell you,
Yeah.
we cannot tell you you can put your dock in, unfortunately.
I know. And if we do put it in without your permission, we're fined, right? Yeah. I know.
I don't see an answer.
I know, I know, but
What's
we
the
could be
answer? Do we
fined.
have
That's a
the
risk
answer?
we need to think about, right, which
If
we don't
put
want
it in,
to.
what happens?
We could
have
be
to-
fined.
We have to advise you to
We don't
follow,
want an answer to that.
follow the process.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to advise you to do.
I'm
Yeah,
not trying to be
That-
right, I'm just asking.
We can't vote without natural heritage.
I understand.
And
I
so
understand.
I hope they get back on June 5th.
Me too.
If it's,
Yeah.
you know. if it's
Otherwise,
June-
we lost the whole summer.
Well, no, June's, not your best month. There's other months.
Well,
that-
yeah, I understand. We have new twins. Its first birthday is June 8th, and we're having a big party. So now we get this dock sitting up on the, it's just
Fair to say,
silly.
in the past, some of the actions that we've taken when we've discovered something like this is in lieu of a fine, just ask them to correct the issue and remove the problem, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
That was what the answer I was hoping.
Yeah.
We have to wait and hear what natural heritage says. I mean, that's the process.
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that's the
I
action we've taken
understand,
in the past
yeah.
on some of these issues.
Every case is different.
Exactly, yep.
Second to that, just so you know, we went by the property today. The fence is done. So that's done. We were supposed to let you know about that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think they took care of that.
Yeah. So it's all set. So, well, thank
Have you
you.
inquired to natural heritage about your schedule and your status, just to let them know?
Well, no, I had to, I sent them a certified letter yesterday.
we
When
just
they,
got it yesterday.
I only found out yesterday, so I sent them a certified letter. I wrote a letter about that it was seasonal and all of that. And again, it does say that it could take 30 days,
I
to
did
find out.
explain to them, I think I gave them your contact.
You did.
I gave you their contact.
You did.
explained the situation to them and said,
Yeah.
this has been here for
Yeah.
years.
So I did exactly what Amy said, and what they said, no, just issue the order of intent. And then yesterday, they're like, no, now we need page
Yeah.
5 and 6.
So.
And $300. Yeah.
We're all hoping that this gets resolved.
Oh, me too. Me too. It's been such a source of joy for our family, and, being the second year after my mother passed, it's hard.
Yeah, that you shouldn't
Yeah, yeah, but,
we have to give the same advice, that's the trouble.
no, that's okay. We understand.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, too.
You can also urge them as the deadline gets close, just you can ask
Yeah.
what's going on with it.
Okay.
You
Thank
can,
you.
or we should?
No, they
Both of
can.
you. You can too.
Thank you,
Okay.
and thanks for your support.
All right, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
And we need to continue, Amy?
June 5th.
Okay, I move that we continue
Second.
the hearing, June 5th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Can we
Thank
skip to Mr. Saffron?
you. Is non-critical landing going to show up tonight, or we don't know?
I don't know if they're gonna show up. There's a change in plan. Can we talk about it afterwards?
Sure, sure.
I would guess if they were gonna show, they would have been here by now.
Okay,
It's a minor change in plan, so they might have asked, they expected me to talk to it after.
yeah, okay. All right, next we have, is it discussion?
Yep.
Or request for extension permit?
Request for an extension permit.
177 4th Street.
Right.
You're up.
Hello, I'm Steve Saffron. I live at 1774 Street, and I'm here today to request an extension of my notice of intent for 1 year because I was not able to get everything completed within the original 3 years due to issues with the contractor and my own self. And as you can see, Amy, you sent my email around?
I did, yep, and it's actually in their summaries too.
Okay. I am finishing up the house in terms of windows and siding. I've completed the framework of the place, and what I was planning to do last year was, once the house was completed, you go to the landscape as the next phase, and then that's where I was going to do the mitigation. I'm partway through the mitigation in terms of preparing the soil, but what I'd like to do is request an extension to complete that effort, the building and the mitigation. I plan to have it, I finally have someone contractor-wise to do the windows and the siding and the other stuff I also have out there. So I'm fully expecting it to be done by fall, but I'm requesting a year's extension.
So I guess the first question that comes up is, do we have a filed request?
It is, yes.
You did file.
Yes, you did file.
All right, any comments then, for us, Amy?
Yeah, so I guess, Steve, when we sat down last week, we talked about
Yep.
plantings and that, I believe at our last meeting, we said end of June we wanted them done. I don't, so I had given you a list of additional people. I'd like to hear about your progress with that.
In terms of the landscape people, I was in discussion with Crawford Land Management.
Yeah, you told me that last week.
Yeah. And he said he was not able to get to it within the next couple of weeks. And then we talked about some of the other landscape people.
Yep.
And what I decided to do is I was going to, someone gave me the preparation I can do myself. And then we talked about seeding it with the grasses and putting mulch on it. But then in terms
You didn't
of
talk about doing mulch.
straw? Straw.
Well,
Okay.
to keep but that's
Yep.
in between the plantings.
Yep. And I'm planning to go to Cape Cod Wholesale Nursery in Falmouth and get the plantings that I need. And essentially then call up Crawford to come in and make sure if all the planting is done correctly. That's where that is, on the mitigation.
You don't have a date from them when they can do the work.
No.
And I did give you a list of other people. It's
Yep.
putting plants in the ground. It's not a new vegetation plan, so.
Right.
Did you call them?
Not yet. I was trying to get Crawford on there because they did all the planning. But I'm still planning to make the June 30th date.
And the later it gets into this, even June 30th is a real push because it gets really, well, it doesn't feel like it, but it can get really hot and it gets really
Oh.
hard for planting, so the sooner the better, I think was our, that was a drop dead deadline.
Right.
And I think, I mean, I'm glad that we know the status of your additions, of your addition work. But I think the planting needs to be, like we said last time, the planting has to be a priority.
Amy, I had a question for you. Is any jeopardy to the plantings with the proposed work that be going on around it?
No, that's outside the limit of work, there shouldn't be anything going on there.
It's outside.
All right, well, let's go around the table. We talked about this last time, so I'm sure we've got some questions. Ernie, you weren't here. I don't know if you have any, yeah. Mark, any comments?
Other than the nursery you mentioned
Yep.
may or may not handle the species that you're looking for, you may have to examine another alternative.
Okay.
Okay? There are
They'll have to, I'll do whatever it needs to be done.
You'll probably want to make a phone call before you go up there. I think you're going to find they handle mostly ornamentals.
Okay, I am planning to visit the site on Friday. I have to go off Cape, and I'll be coming back Friday morning, and I'll plan to stop there on the way, see exactly what they have and what's going on.
That's all I've got to say at the moment.
Yeah, I may be amenable to the extension request if we could put in language that says we'd have a June 30th site visit, and if the plantings are not done to our satisfaction, then a stop work order should be issued. Something along those lines.
That's on the whole request. Notice of intent, right? That's the building also?
Yes, yeah. If the plantings aren't done, yeah.
June 30th, 2019.
It's a Sunday.
19, yeah. Well, I'm not,
I'm just saying, well, you said June 30th. so I would-
on or before, I
Yeah.
can say July or
So
whatever.
It could be the first.
Maybe
July
say
3rd,
the
July 1st.
the 28th, maybe
Or
would be
28th,
better.
whatever you want to put it.
And that could just be you, Amy, not the whole commission
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought
necessarily.
you meant all of you.
I just meant it be verified that the plantings are
That's
done.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with what Jim just said, we need to verify. How many plants are in the planting plan that are supposed to be planted by now?
I don't remember. It's 1,000 square feet broken into 2 areas, and roughly the plants are 5 feet on center because they're mostly shrubs.
See,
so.
I can't do the math in my head, but okay.
Yeah, there is a
It's-
number. I don't.
It's
I have a file. I
it's a
should
lot
have
of
it.
plants, I think is probably the right answer, right?
Mhm. Actually, that was in a different file because that was part of the enforcement. Should just combine them.
Yeah, I think I agree with Jim. If it's not done by the end of June, we just stop it.
Carolyn?
When does your permit expire?
It has, the current one,
Yes.
it has expired.
When did it expire?
I do not know off the top of my head.
March.
Amy?
End of
There was some confusion on the dates, so.
Okay.
And we do have the ability to issue an extension past that, if you see fit.
I would be in favor of a 6-month extension as opposed to a 1 year. 6 months, I question whether you'll be able to get it done by June 30th.
Well, that's just a planting. He's asking for,
I know.
okay.
Thank you. Yep.
I know, but that would, it would get, as you said, getting into June. That's a tough, could be, we're hoping for sunny, warm weather. So
So
why?
that would go for 6 months, would go where?
6 months would give you the fall planting season to
Okay.
get it done.
Oh, we're not talking.
I think that's a good idea.
No.
No.
We did-
I think
Last
that's- I
meeting,
think the
Carolyn,
priority has to be. the
there was a
planting
lot
season.
of discussion and expressed disappointment with the fact that this extension occurred without us being notified. The permit was expiring, and the fact that plantings hadn't been conducted, given, past history with this particular project. So we had a vote. It was 3-3 to not provide an extension. So we had a lot of discussion on this. It was very close to having no extension whatsoever. I think the fact that there was a roof job underway with a roof that was exposed that kind of swayed the argument to go ahead, have an extension under the provision that he'd come back in 2 weeks with a contractor lined up and some assurances that we'd see the plantings occur by June 30th. So I think Jim's proposal kind of gets at what we're looking at. The only alternative I could see would be to just have an extension that stops on June 30th. And then we could discuss having another extension once we see the plantings to our satisfaction. Those are the only two alternatives I can really see, other than, deciding not to have an extension, which almost happened last hearing. Paula, any thoughts?
Yeah, those plantings really need to be done. We're giving you ample time to get them in.
Mhm.
And I know that the weather is not conducive, but they need to go in. I would say that June 30th.
Okay. Any other issues that we should think about here? The 1 year, that's going to allow you to do your physical work for the notice of intent?
Yes. That will let me finish up the notice of intent,
Okay.
Is your roof complete?
except for one small section. But yes, and be aware that I have an express for the old house. This particular notice of intent is for the new addition. That's all. So you'll see people working there, but it's not under the new house.
All right, well, I'll put forward a motion to approve the request for an extension of permit for 177 Forest Street with the condition that a stop work order will be issued June 30th if the 1,000 square feet of mitigation plantings are not completed to the commission's satisfaction.
So under discussion.
1 year, sorry.
1 year extension.
Yeah, Paula seconded, I think.
Yes.
Oh, I-
So little time for discussion. We did talk about extending the mitigation square footage last time. I think we were not certain whether it was an appropriate action, given the fact we were not going to levy a fine. And so that's just something I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with, because that was discussed last time as an option. I've thought about it a lot. I'm not sure that would not be arbitrary. Any
I think
thoughts?
I think the only so the 1,000 square foot was as a result of mitigation for the expansion.
Mhm.
Additional mitigation plantings potentially would be arbitrary at this time, because the only thing that has technically in violation currently is that you were operating for a little bit of time without a permit, but there was confusion as to the dates. So that would be the only potential new, for a lack of a better term, violation, is operating for a month or so without.
Right.
There was no new activity that would have triggered
Yep.
additional mitigation.
Yeah. And just to ask again, just to be positive, this is not a discussion item tonight. We actually have a filed extension request before us.
We do.
Okay, that was important, I think.
We do.
So, yeah, any discussion on this or other things?
I just want to clarify what a 1 year extension means at this point. What are the start and end dates of the extension?
It would be from March.
Yep.
So it'd be whatever the end date in original expiration at the end of March was, it would be a year from then. So almost
Okay.
10.5 months from now.
And that is explicitly called out?
It will be, we have it, so let me see, the extension, the order of conditions expired 3/23/19, so it will expire 3/23/20.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, you got an extension.
Thank you.
Thank you. Here's the signature, Steve, we'll get this to you as soon as we process the rest of the paperwork, okay? I am, but I'm in and out of the office. I can email you tomorrow with
Your paper copy, sorry about that.
Thanks.
I haven't quite got on board with this yet.
Not
All right.
fully either.
Yeah.
I think I can make it. I think I see a light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, Amy, you've done well.
I actually, I'm really tired, but I feel better right now physically than I have all day.
Well, I'm moving things along.
All right.
Must be the bracing discussion we had.
That's what it is.
Well, let's sleep good tonight. I want to go back to the change in plan for 9 Fiddlers.
Do we even hear it if they don't
Well, it's
represent
a
it?
change in plan, so technically they don't always come for these. I can
Okay.
speak to it. If you don't feel comfortable voting, then put it off.
Yeah, please give us your thoughts.
The 9 Fiddlers, what they wanted to do, they want to install a fence in the very front of the property on the road, which is somewhat it's on the outer edge of the 100-foot buffer zone. It's more decorative than anything. It's a highly landscaped area, walkways, grass, so I didn't see any particular. If it was just that, I would have probably just done it administratively. But they did ask, so we had a lot of back and forth, the owners and myself and the engineer and the landman and the landscapers about these plantings. If you recall, on the property lines, originally they were calling for privet, and we had said no privet there. And I had suggested eastern red cedars. The applicant and the owners really weren't in favor of eastern red cedars, so they asked. So they asked about Lelands or arborvitaes, which are a varietal that's not really, they're not invasive, but they're not native. It would go partially within to the 50-foot no disturb.
Is arborvitae, are we talking about a northern white cedar then?
Yes, yeah.
That exact
So they
species,
are
or is it a,
Well, they don't have, they just said arborvitae.
there's a lot of
There's
There's
a
a
lot
bunch of varieties,
So if
yeah.
you
but they're
wanna
all
be-
white cedar.
related?
Or would a white cedar survive there?
It just says thuja, so it just gives the,
What is it?
thuja, Thuga. It doesn't
Okay,
give
that's one of the varieties.
the genus, no, it's a genus species, that's the first part of the scientific name, I think. So if you want to be specific about a certain one, that's maybe a little bit more native.
Yeah, well, northern white cedar is native to starting in northern Massachusetts. I'm not sure if the varieties that people plant are really the same. I know leylands are not really helpful for anything I've heard. Yeah.
I had mentioned, my only concern was, if it's by the road, then I could see it, but we're trying to get into that area that's more naturalized, where our buck mitigation plantings are, where the lawn's supposed to be natural. So it creeps in little areas into the, if you went out there, basically they started planting the beach plums here. So where the beach plums stop, that's where they would start, and that's probably at the 40-foot point. It's up to you. They're not invasive, but it's up to you if you want to keep it purely native or not.
Yeah.
They're using it they want to use it for screening.
My quick feeling is that we wouldn't have approved that when the order was before us, and so I don't
They
think.
weren't specific, it just said hedge,
Right, but I think we're trying to naturalize that little section there, so I would want to see us hold ground on a native species that should be. That's my feeling.
I've tried to talk them into, for screening, like, trying to talk them into eastern red cedar.
They don't want that. Is there any sense to extend the beach pump?
Well, that's my other thought too, but I think they want something that's gonna be more of a
Shade?
fence.
Yeah.
So they're hollies, there's native hollies.
How would a holly do with that exposed environment though?
Yeah, I don't know.
Wouldn't
That
take
was
the
my,
salt.
because I thought of that
Yeah.
too, it might get
Too
blasted.
much salt. Yeah, the red cedars are pretty appropriate, really.
Yeah,
Gonna have a hard time holding the shape.
As a hedge.
Right.
But
What's
that's
gonna
not-
happen is I'm
not
gonna cook
really.
the tops off to try to manage it, and then they become more gangly. So,
I mean, technically, they shouldn't be cutting the trees in the 50-foot zone. Yeah.
That's
So-
what we normally out there.
But are arborvitae going to tolerate the salt?
it's probably a 50-50 shot whether they'll handle it. It would really depend on the severity of the season. It'll change from year to year.
If you
Isn't
plant
all-
them right on Nantucket Sound, I've seen in the past 5 years, people have tried to, or ones that had been planted maybe right before we came in, they've just gotten absolute, the wind and the salt has just killed them, but that's right on the water. This is a little bit in, kind of in the harbor, I
This is
don't know,
broken a little bit,
a
yeah.
little bit, but
Protected from
it is
southwest.
50/50, it's 50/50.
At the end
Not
of
much.
Bear Lane, the very last house on the beach has, after one of the hurricanes, half of the arborvitae died, the half facing the water. The
Yeah.
other half of it is
Exactly.
still alive.
Wonder if as a compromise, we could get them to go to 60 feet with a mix of natives and then do their arborvitae hedge.
Outside 60?
They're talking about right around 40 right now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
up to, 40 and beyond. Yeah, I would do that.
And they shouldn't really be necessarily managing, having a hedge in the 50-foot zone anyway.
Right, the old property was much more manicured, and we were
Right.
able to kind of dial that back with
Right.
what we approved for their site amendments.
And once you get outside the 60s, that basically towards the road side, so it's
Halfway
real,
to the
it's
house.
kind of just like a
Yeah.
lawn to either
Yeah.
side of it.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I said, I've given them our native plant list, and I said, pick something. There's a whole
But
bunch.
to actually, like, get a little more mitigation out of it, bring that to 60, not just a hedge, but like maybe a mix of beech plum and red cedar, and then let them do their, I don't know, compromise, but.
They won't view that as a compromise. That's giving up too much space. I think.
How long does it go? Is it 100
It's
feet?
all the way to the road, to the 100, yeah?
Oh, past the 100?
Well, the 100 is
Right, that's it.
at the road, really.
Well, I think then maybe propose what Jim's saying, or have something, because I don't think that we should support this. I don't think it's consistent. It's an ornamental, non-native. I don't think we would have approved it during the hearing. So,
That's what I told Dr.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of mitigation on that site. I remember, and didn't they already come back and we kind of knocked some back?
Yeah, because they proposed a smaller, they had a bigger patio, then they proposed
Right.
a smaller patio, so then there was less.
And I remember not being
required.
totally happy with that because just in the scope of the whole project. So,
right.
They have further reduced the lawns, I mean, they're gonna do some more ornamental plantings out front than lawn, I guess it's better.
something, yeah.
But I can convey that to them.
But don't we have to do something that's somehow affirmative, definitive, because in what we approved, there isn't anything specific identified to go.
Right, I would
So,
say approve the
we can
fence.
say no,
Yep.
but that doesn't end the conversation, right?
Well, you could end it by just saying it has to be a native plant, what's in there.
That's what
It has to be and it has to be approved, I can prove it, but it has to be an appropriate for the site native plant.
Right. That's what we approved of the order, so I think that's what we
Okay.
can hold on.
Did we approve a living fence or what?
It said hedge, we missed it,
It said a
and I missed it.
hedge.
It said hedge, we did not say what it was.
I think it was discussed as.
Well, it was, after we had decided, I had asked what it was after the hearing, and they said privet, and I said no.
Well,
There was no privet.
no privet, because you've gone back.
Privet's invasive, so, yeah.
And you've gone back over the two.
I think I've gone back to the tape, but privet's invasive.
It's been a long time since we've approved privet in the 0 to 50. Yeah. I recall really trying to get something out of this 0 to 50 vegetation that was real habitat, so I feel pretty confident the intent of our order was to have improvements there. And so to put in a non-native, I think, is counter to what our intention and our votes were, so that's my feeling. Do you need a vote on this, or you do? Okay.
Unless you want to continue discussion until next time, but I think if you move to approve the fence and natives only in a certain area, then that's fine.
Yeah, and bring back the message.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So I guess we're ruling to not approve the request.
So
Or approve it with an
Yeah.
amended language.
outside of the 50, do we generally approve non-natives then?
We do approve some ornamentals outside of that area zone.
And so they're asking to go into 40 feet.
Yeah. About 40 feet. They're asking 40
Right.
feet from the top of the bank or their bulkhead.
So yeah, that's why I was saying, like, if they, did something else at 60 and then
Sure.
tapered in some red cedars or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Just another idea, viburnums, would viburnums fill in? Are there some varieties of viburnum that are natives that could maybe satisfy those guys as a hedge?
I'm not familiar
maybe?
with ones that are so hardy for that. You tend to
I
see
see.
viburnums more in like a freshwater, shady environment than this. I think that you could get them to grow, but not without a lot of attention that we usually don't encourage.
Yeah. I think we're trying to get plants that would be there.
There's not a lot. I mean, there's your beach plum, your bearberry, your cedars. There's not a lot that grows up there.
Yeah.
White pine, I don't know if that would.
They probably don't want that.
Yeah.
I think I even mentioned that to them, but they get real big.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
I think the beach plum is really good habitat for that location. Okay, so we're gonna move to amend. How's this gonna go? We have a request?
Approve the change in plan with the following changes.
Okay, all right, then I move that we approve the request for change in plans with the specific amendment to not accept the proposal to put in a non-native arborvitae and instead offer suggestions for pulling back that planting to the 60-foot line or putting in native plants that would do well in that location.
And we're approving the fence. Oh,
So
sorry.
we're approving the, from the 60-foot line to the street of ornamentals.
Isn't that already in there? I thought we were just talking about what was gonna happen in 0 to 50.
Well, no, from the road all the way to about 40 feet is where they asked for the arborvitae's, the hedge.
No.
I think really between the properties, up by the road, I don't think it's the worst case to have
Right.
some arborvitae's up there outside like the 60, like you said. I mean, we allow sometimes, a mix for foundation plantings, a mix of natives and ornamentals. It's kind of along the same lines. It's so tight there, it's any habitat you have, if at all, is out back.
Yeah, no, it's all.
Well, then I guess I'll, before there's a second, I'll amend my motion just to say that we approve the request for change of plans with the exception of no non-native plantings in 0 to 50.
Second.
Any discussion? Do you think that covers it well enough, Amy?
That's fine.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right.
So without person who holds two of the leases present. I don't know if we really should talk about the leasing of the box. I don't know if that's fair.
Dax is off the,
Oh, sorry, Dax.
Yeah, Dax
Yeah,
is off.
Dax, with like June 5th, they're working on a plan. Red River, still nothing.
I think we should postpone the discussion on Great Swamp, because I think you want to have the present leaseholder here.
And Main Street.
And I think we have one more hearing before it expires, and I think we're at some reasonable, oh no?
This is it, because this is the
Oh.
last, so just, can I
Okay.
speak to it?
Yeah.
So most of the commissioners were able to come out, at the site visit last week,
Mhm.
and I think we had really I think it was really beneficial, so to see. I think we had some good conversation out there and kind of knew where the, existing lessee is hoping to go with the properties. You know, admittedly, for Great Swamp, it's been fallow for, even if you approved releasing it agriculturally, it's not exempt anymore under the Lands Protection Act. Hasn't been any agricultural activity in the past 5 years. So, but without, I don't want to go any farther without that person present, but if you don't, there's no activity happening on Great Swamp right now dealing with agriculture, so if you don't vote on that tonight, even though it expires June 1st, and our next meeting is 3 weeks away.
Okay,
Because we have a 5 Wednesday month, so we don't meet on the 5th Wednesday.
okay.
So it's June 5th, but I don't think there's any harm because it's not actively being used anyways right now.
It would be helpful to have the.
Yeah, and I mean, I did put it out, and I thought at the on-site meeting, we said, oh, see you next week, but I will again reach out. Maybe something happened, or
Mhm.
maybe I didn't say something, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I agree, and I think we had decent agreement on site that where
Yeah.
it was gonna go.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think we're all kind of excited to have a chance to manage that property differently and not have it go to lease.
yeah,
So,
could be a lot.
okay,
Can I update you a little bit on Bell's-Neck?
sure.
We can talk a little about Bell's-Neck. So, as you may or may not know, we had 2 fires in the Bell's-Neck last week. And without getting into too much detail, we believe we know who the individual is. So we are pursuing that with the police department. And in the meantime, some restrictions have been put into place around bog roads to prohibit people from constantly at all hours of the night driving around. I did have some conversation with the police department, and they said, I mean, we're getting towards the end of season now, but for herring. But they did say that they would be willing to work with us and close gates at night if we could find a way to open gates in the morning to the conservation area. So we're having problems with, especially during herring season, Ernie, people coming in there for no good reasons at night. And so it just, we used to keep those gates closed, and it used to be kind of a cooperative effort, and it's kind of fallen apart this year a little bit, so we're trying to recreate that.
Okay. Thanks for checking in, I think it's great news, and Ernie and
Yeah.
Carolyn, we did discuss last meeting to have a subcommittee formed that would look at managing that property, focusing more on next year, and just come up with recommendations on what to do, so I think that's gonna go forward. And so I don't know if we wanna talk about structure of that subcommittee tonight, or just wait for another time. But
It's up to you.
the full committee would have to vote on anything that the subcommittee.
Oh, and I haven't checked with Anita to make sure about the subcommittee being able to vote on the issues when they came forward to the commission.
Right.
We've had subcommittees before for things, and it's not been a problem, but
Right.
I just don't want to run into quorum issues with the commission if half the commission is on a subcommittee, and then we need to make a vote and they can't vote.
How's the agenda for the 5th?
Big.
Is it big? Yay. Okay, because I was gonna say, because we'll be talking,
But on the other hand, you never know, because this looks big.
Yeah.
yeah,
And then things drop off because people aren't ready, so.
right. All right, well, we have time. I mean, there's no crisis because Main Street's not up for 2 years, or a year and a half,
3 years.
3 years, so.
2022.
I think-
We still, I mean, regardless, as noted on the site by the current lessee, you know, if you're, you want to give people adequate time if we're not going to do something, so
Right.
sooner the better, but.
Yep, and the same for Bell's Neck. I think we need to
Yeah.
develop some management strategies, so that should happen.
In regards to Bell's Neck, there's the certain individual I'm thinking of has been particularly problematic. And I don't know if we can issue, like, have a, not restraining, but a no trespassing order for this person, not allow this person on these properties, on our properties. Because I don't know if they haven't proven that it is this person. We know he's doing some things, but we don't know if he's done all the things definitively. I don't know if you'd be interested in that, but I would, he's certainly, somebody's causing us a lot of headaches, more so than normal. And to not allow this person on our property, I think might be something to look into.
I would say that he's damaging plant life, which we don't want in the conservation area. So,
If it didn't get noticed by the neighbors, this could have been it could have been real bad. I mean, fire in general is not a terrible thing environmentally, but he's also wasn't too far from a couple homes.
right.
Yeah.
And he's cutting cedars, he's making, different types of.
Yeah, so
So he's doing things that shouldn't be done, so.
I'm working with the police department
Yeah.
on this.
I think we'll rely on you, Amy. If you come back and say the police have a case against him and his evidence, then I think we should act in that way.
I think you have 7 minutes. Sorry, do you want to talk more about the bog? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure if anyone else said.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. The land management plan that was put into place by,
BSC?
yeah, BSC, quite a while ago. That's gone by for several years, and I mean, there's a list of recommendations, and none of that stuff has been acted on from that point to this. And, I think we need to move this thing up the agenda and get it started.
Yeah, I agree.
So if we need to form a subcommittee to take some action, I'd recommend we do so.
Okay.
Yeah,
One of the big action items is getting that parking, not letting people park right up against that run. It's creating more of a vegetated buffer.
Yeah.
That's one of their recommendations, and it addresses the opposite side as well. There's a lot of issues
Yeah.
there.
Just some split rail fence, as far as we're comfortable moving it back, and maybe a few plantings and just let it.
It's so hard packed, we'll have to rough it up somehow or add a bunch of loam.
Right.
It's so hard there,
Yeah.
but yes.
Well, it seems to me that it's pretty obvious that what
The,
needs to
reservoir.
happen is we need to go through and prioritize
Parking
what
area,
needs to
fish-
take
fish
place
ladder.
and then institute the action.
Yep. I can resend that along to people if you want. It is online, but I can resend it. It's big management plan.
Where online is it? Is it on
It should be,
the Dropbox?
no, I'll put it in the Dropbox. Even easier. I'll email it to Paula.
So what exactly is the appropriate course of action to establish this subcommittee we're talking about?
Did we actually vote on it last time? Or did we just discuss it? I thought,
I think it should be an agenda item
okay,
to approve create a subcommittee.
right,
Put it
okay.
on for next
The
time.
next hearing.
Please.
If you could check on any of the issues with
Right.
voting or
Right, 'cause
whatever.
we-
I will, because I gotta check with Anita.
We have to have a quorum. Let me jump ahead and bring up new business if I can, because I was asked to go to the Waterways Committee meeting tonight to talk about a few issues that have mutual interest between the two committees. And they're suggesting that we form a subcommittee with participants of the Conservation Commission, the Waterways, the Harbor Master, the Natural Resource Officer, to talk about things related to docks, dredging.
Mm-hmm.
They had a whole list of things that they have an interest in. And so, yeah, they asked me to come in. They had very little time before I had to come here, so we didn't get to discuss very much. But I said I would bring this to the commission and just say, okay, do you folks want to entertain that thought? And the one issue that resonated with me was dredging in the harbors and trying to find ways to identify locations where it would be beneficial,
Right.
locations where it wouldn't be. And that makes sense to me, because probably half of Witchmere shoreline could be dredged without resource impacts and maybe resource benefits. So I think the chairman of that committee reached out to me as chair and said, hey, we need to talk some more. So if you folks think it's a good idea, then maybe we could put this on the agenda for the next meeting as well, and then have a little discussion next meeting about structure. We all can't serve on 4 new committees, subcommittees, and we have to find out if we can vote too, if we serve on a subcommittee. For example, I'm participating in this oyster reef proposal. That's going to eliminate me from voting on that oyster reef when it comes before us. So we can't have 4 or 5 of us not able to vote on dredging rules or management rules for the
Yeah,
bog
I'll clear
areas.
with the town clerk, and if she doesn't know, talk to council.
It seems like, so any meeting between more than 2 of us has to be publicly posted.
Right.
And as long as that's done, then there's nothing to say that those people can't vote on something else.
Right.
It's
I'll just double check it.
I think so. I think it's when you have a notice of intent or some application that a member was principally involved in developing, then I would think you would need to not vote on that.
Yeah, that's
Well, because
a
like from
conflict of
Sacotucket,
interest.
we had 2, you and Jane Fleming.
Right. Right.
And you voted on Sacotucket, you were helped,
Yeah.
you were the subcommittee for it.
Right. I think subcommittees make sense. It's when, like, if I'm helping draft a narrative
Right,
for a
when it's
notice
your
of intent.
project, essentially.
Yeah. All right, well then, any other thoughts on the harbor, the waterways subcommittee?
Well, yeah, I mean, in going through these hearings for the docks, I feel like there's an opportunity to clarify those regulations. I feel like the shellfish thing has essentially been a pretty effective way at reducing the number of docks in town. Herring River in certain places really wouldn't benefit from a dock every, was it 80 feet or 65 feet?
65.
That would really not be
Very detrimental.
good, but it's tough to, it seems like in court, it's marginal, and, it's the art, I don't know, it's gray enough that we get very strong arguments again and again, where maybe it can just be as simple as going to 200-foot spacing or something and
Which is what we did in Pleasant Bay.
accomplish the same goal.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to even talk about. We don't have to have these intense hearings and argue about shellfish counts and, So I think there might be an opportunity to somehow clarify that and just make it simple.
Yeah, it's a great point, but I will counter that I don't think that we've been very successful preventing docks in certain places. So
Right, I would like it to be better, and
Yeah. There's a couple key locations where I think it probably should not have been approved, but it was.
The only
So-
one I can think of is the one in Winchmere.
Well, the Maha dock, and it was approved, so I guess I shouldn't say too much, but it, to me, was a highly viable shellfish
Well, that one
habitat.
was, that
Yeah.
one was a legal thing, and it was it wasn't necessarily approved, but we kind of made the best of a bad situation.
That was the Winchmere?
Yeah.
The Herring River?
There was one in Herring River that I felt like we shouldn't have approved, but it was. But either way, I think Jim's point's really good. The clarification on what can happen is really
also
important.
say on freshwater, we actually haven't even come close to our full allowable development of
Yeah,
docks, and it would be just
Could happen.
devastating to see. I don't know how much. There are certainly hundreds of more docks, maybe 1,000 more docks could be put in, and maybe the spacing should be adjusted.
Mhm.
Or something.
Yeah, okay. Do you have some thoughts on this, Mark, or no?
Nope, on that one.
Yeah, no, I think they're both really worthy subcommittees. Just, can we find time, to make it happen? So, all right, well, we'll have a formal item on the agenda next hearing about it. I have one more item under new business. Am I jumping ahead too much? All right. Uncle Vini's, the property almost to the very end at Red River Beach that we approved recently, looks to me like fertilizer pellets, and looks to me like the lawn has kind of pushed what I think was supposed to be constructed there. So
Is
Little-
that the one on the left side that's
Yeah.
right on the marsh?
Yeah.
There's a tight tank in
Because I'd
there.
mentioned
Yeah.
that it looked like they put in irrigation as well.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking at that after they, maybe a week or two ago,
Yeah.
staring at the dirt, thinking, yeah, that's.
Yeah, there's fertilizer pellets, and I think that lawn is pushing the plants.
The last time I was
Well,
there.
I wasn't, I was here when that,
Yeah,
that was before my time when they actually came before the committee.
I won't. I'll
Be
tell
down
you
there
my
next
story
day or
over a
two, so
beer
if you
someday.
look.
I wasn't very pleased with that one, but anyways, that could be an enforcement action. It's a real
Yeah,
good
it's a good-
example of recent, conditions that are not being complied to with.
Also on that road, one of the properties right next to the fish run, they were told to remove their fence.
Mhm.
When we fined them, they paid, but they were supposed to remove any fence in the 0 to 50 and file for, this was before, right around the time of our 60 foot, so 60 feet actually. And to file for everything else, and they have ignored it all.
Yeah.
So they will be getting fines
Okay.
to get it out.
Sounds good. I'm happy to discuss that when the time comes.
One other thing, I think I thought we had much clearer language on the lawns.
I thought we did too.
I mean, I could have sworn we did, but,
Well, let's put
I
it on
don't know
and
if
get
it
it in
somehow
there. We'll just
was
say
in
no.
like it was in a draft, but then somehow,
Clearly
yeah.
is my issue. You,
I thought I pretty clearly said no fertilizers, pesticides,
Yeah,
or
yep, I thought it
herbicides.
did too, and I don't know.
Um,
Let me check what was posted
It's not
online
there,
versus
it's-
what I have here, which I printed
It's not.
off the server. But we'll get that cleaned up right away. We'll get that cleaned up right away.
Bless you.
So that's all I have for new business.
One set of minutes,
Which one?
November 7th.
You okay? Did you say November 7th?
Yeah. I know she,
Like yesterday.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't see it.
It is in the,
Here, you can have mine because I wasn't here, so I can't vote
Okay.
on it. You can pass it down. I can vote on it.
Yeah, you can't, because that's a substantive change, and
You-
sometimes we don't
Yeah.
have quorum to vote.
You can vote, but it's hard for you to review.
Right,
Yes, yeah.
right. Hmm. I hear you. Well, that's when they mean it there. Shouldn't have to do it.
Just a question on the 6 Saquatucket Point property. Was that main stretching conducted? Do we know? That was
Has it
November.
been done?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't think it has been.
Well, no, it may have been because John Rendon had the dredge in Saquatucket. And they usually all try to partner.
Yeah.
It could have been.
It looks like that the sand berm's still there.
Off the top of my head, I don't know.
There's some familiar project names in this one, huh? I don't have any comments myself.
I would move to accept the minutes.
Okay. Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing else.
All right, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.